I joined the regular army in 2001 and we went to East Timor. So what we saw was just a population just decimated. And then 2005, the chance that this selection came up, it was a new squadron, the Counter Terrorist Team, slightly shortened selection. We call it the longest day, and it's every fitness test the military has for about 12 hours. When you're tired, cold, wet, and hungry, you have to dig deep. You now have to fight, because all that stuff that we talked about and that is just getting to work. So we're doing a lot of covert missions. My job on that was MOE and ended up as head of the MOE cell. I did that from 2005 to 2009. I came over to Australia, fell into policing, and now been in the fire brigade for the last 12 years. It's my real passion is to help others, and I do custom courses every now and then with government agencies. It's just good unarmed combat, just back to the Nancy Wake, the Fairbairn, the Applegate sort of days in the SOE. If you're going to be in a fight, you just got to finish it and win.
Okay, this week on the debrief then, all the way from New Zealand, well, not all the way because he's still there, I'm down the line to him, is Damian Porter. He's ex-New Zealand SAS. Damian, how are you, buddy? All right?
Yeah, nice to see you, Phil. Thank you. Yeah, a little bit different than 2-2. In 2005, we had the CT team, or what you call the Black Roll team, stand up, and
Okay.
we started that over there in New Zealand because of a need. So not full Sabre Squadron SAS, but we did the Commando and the Counter Terrorist side of things.
Okay, all right. That's so we'll get into that. What I want to do today, Damien, is get to know you as a person, really, and just delve a little bit into your history and where you came from and how you ended up where you are now and what you're doing now. So, if we take you right back to when was you? You're obviously from New Zealand. What was your childhood like?
Gosh, wow! I'll get the whiteboard
Probably
out and the markers.
That.
It's very different being on this side of the microphone. Look, good childhood, kind of high performers, not me. My sister was a ballerina from the age of 3, and she had the fireplace full of the trophies and things, and it was all about her. So you was
getting a little bit reflective glory from your sister then.
She had a lot of nice friends, I'll tell you that.
Stable background, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, good family background up until the age of 13, good schooling, and I was sort of looking at the Air Force as Top Gun. I think that was our era back there for my career. And parents split up at around 13, and that was actually the same time. It wasn't not related. I started lifting weights. My dad played rugby. There was a bunch of weights down in the laundry, and I asked him, "What are these? Can you show me how to do these things?" And I started lifting weights, and long story short, over about 4 or 5 years, I became an international bodybuilding champion, lightweight, not steroids, and that was my sort of career path. So that was, I say childhood, because that was at 17, 18, and back then I was a child, and that was my sort of education, growing up a little bit, and then moving into actually achieving anything from my own merits was bodybuilding.
Yeah, so. Were you only good at school? Yeah? Did you enjoy school even? I do ask this to everybody because school was never my bag. I hated it.
Look, I was okay at school. I was trying to get those marks for the pilot thing for the Air Force, and I repeated a year to get those marks, the maths and the physics. But I think every grown up looks back. We're open to learning now, but as a kid, you're not very good at learning, and I just wasn't as dedicated to that as I would be now. But I was all right. People much better than me, and I gave it a crack. But I don't think I was anywhere near as focused on schooling as an outcome as sports.
Okay, so yeah, that's the same as me. I like the physical aspect of all that sort of stuff. So did you, when you first left school, what did you do? Where did you go?
Yeah, that's a good question, and not many people know that one. My first job. While I was still at school, I was shifting furniture, so lifting pianos and trying to keep up with all the grown-ups. But at 17 and a half, when I left school, I became a blacksmith, and I worked in a foundry with 3 other men, and they were men, I was a boy, and we made leaf springs, the springs that go on like Land Rovers and trucks and things, and wow. I was hammering steel, and for a year and a half, I was in the foundry doing that till 4 o'clock, and then going and hitting the gym and doing the dieting. And a funny story, Phil. I used to heat up my rice and mince in the fire there, just slightly outside of it, in the furnace, and we did that at morning tea and lunchtime as well.
Wow. So you must have been, presumably then, you must have been quite athletic, because I mean, bending leaf springs all day, that's not done by somebody who can't smash a hammer down pretty hard, is it?
Yeah, look, that was a tough job, Phil. I remember the heaviest leaf springs were the fire engine springs. They were about 12 leaves deep, and they probably weighed about 70 kilos, and I weighed about 70 kilos on the stage. So it was always a personal challenge, but it was a really physical job, and it was a man's job. But what I liked about it was you went from start to finish, and you created it, and you finished a finished product.
Yeah. No. So where did you move on to from then? What was your, did you still have this aspiration to become a Top Gun?
No. I'd literally left the recruiters hanging. They were expecting me on the bus, and my friends group, we're all sort of high performance sports people. They convinced me not to go down the Air Force route and to go into bodybuilding. And the answer to your question there is, I had been in the foundry, making the springs, and then doing the bodybuilding after work, and personal training was invented then. At Les Mills in New Zealand, they invented franchise personal training. I was looking at these guys, going, well, he's just been at university. He doesn't know anything. This is arrogant, egocentric little kid. And long story short, I became a personal trainer from my physical background, all my experience over that time. I was about 19 years old, then been lifting weights for 6 years, had some All Blacks under my belt, some rugby players, and I became a personal trainer. And that became my actual career path for around about 8 to 10 years.
Okay. So I see the self-defense stuff. When did that sort of start? When did you start taking an interest in, fighting and self-defense and all that sort of stuff?
Gosh, that's a good question. I was just thinking about that myself the other day. Look, as a kid at school, and I think anybody that hasn't been exposed to a fight the first time, they're scared as hell. They're scared as hell to throw that first punch. It's not normal for a normal good human to do that. And, I got hit. I got smacked around. I wasn't bullied. But I managed to throw a punch after some time. And after that, I tried to look at what's the, air quotes, best style out there. What's the Bruce Lee, the one that's going to win? And unbeknownst to me, there was nothing like that. But I did come across in Dunedin the Todd School of Combat. And his background actually goes back to Fairbairn and Sykes, and also Rex Applegate.
Wow.
So that
okay. I mean, that was the Commando dagger guys in China, poking people with extremely sharp weapons.
Exactly, putting holes in souls. And that was the place to learn. Funny thing is, you don't often, when you're surrounded by those good things, you don't take advantage of it. I left my hometown. I went to Wellington, was a trainer there, and I joined the military. I joined what you call the Territorials, I think the TA over there. And okay. I asked one of the SAS guys, one of the badge SAS guys one time on an exercise, what was the best one? And he said, the Todd School of Combat. They've just started training the SAS. And long story short, then I got into self-defense around about the year 1999, 2000, and I qualified in that. And it's just good unarmed combat, just back to the Nancy Wake, the Fairbairn, the Applegate sort of days in the SOE, and I love it.
Yeah. So talking a little bit about that, did you go back to the Todd School, did you at all? Did you do stuff with them?
I did. So Jeff Todd, and he's a brilliant man, very unsung. I qualified with him, so I did his course, and I was lucky enough to become qualified on an Army course, on the regular Army course, around 2002. And then in 2005, when I made it into the Special Forces, into the Commandos team, he actually ran the course for us as well. So I got to qualify. Well, it was bloody hard work, and I still had the scars on my head. In 2005, I qualified again in a slightly higher and more specific role. So it was great to do that. And that's what it's my real passion, is to help others. And if I can help, an 84-year-old, or what was the other day, a 49-year-old secretary, female secretary, avoid that violence with some actual things that work, then great. And I'm just there to try and help people with that and pass on my skills.
Yeah, I think that's very important. A lot of this stuff that you see online, a lot of the stuff that you can be shown potentially doesn't help anybody at all, does it? Do you know what I mean? So the stuff that actually does work is often based around avoiding it in the first place, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, 100%, Phil. And, I've interviewed a few bodyguards myself. One that you might be aware of is Sean Gallagher. He works with Lofty Wiseman every now and then. He was a bodyguard in the UK, and the head of Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister in Australia's bodyguard team. And the job is to run and hide. The job is to avoid it before you get there. That's just silly. And I've heard your audio books. You're avoiding those fights. But
Yeah.
if you get into it, if you can't avoid it, what you don't want to do is have to do 10 years of jiu-jitsu just to handle yourself. You've got to use something that the SOE guys were taught, and the girls, they were professors, they were
Yeah.
geeks, they were beautiful women or young women. They could do the job.
Yeah, so it's the hardest thing I've got going to the softest thing you've got, basically, isn't it, most of the time?
You nailed it. Gosh, it's funny you say that. I put a video up the other day about a Green Beret fighting a Peruvian Special Forces guy. And I think the background to it was a couple of weeks of unarmed combat training, right? At the end of it, they're all hyped up. And this Peruvian Special Forces guy challenged this Green Beret to a no-holds-barred fight. And there was a big circle of the Peruvian guys. And they go at it. And within the first 2 seconds, he's just put his fingers out, gouged the guy's eye. The guy near passes out. Lucky he didn't get stoved in by his mates, but the fight was over in literally 2 seconds on the video. It was unbelievable.
So you went for this Commando Special Forces thing. Were you still a reservist then? Were you still territorial, or was this a full-time thing that you went into?
Yeah, good question. I joined the regular army in 2001, and we went to East Timor.
Okay.
I think you got that. Went to East Timor in 2001, and I was in the regular force. I was in the 1st Battalion in 2005 when a need came up for this Commando squadron to be made, and that was from the guys going to Iraq on the private contracting. Well, it was a pretty interesting little gig. The SBS guys were there. They originally
That's right,
the New Zealand SAS
yeah.
guys were there. For us, it was just when the UN was starting, so we're doing a lot of covert missions and also the UN peacekeeping missions, the Hearts and Minds. But gosh, for when it first started, those Indonesians, they just burnt the place to the ground. So what we saw was just a population just decimated. And
They're
we were
brutal,
trying to help
aren't they?
them.
I mean, that was a brutal conflict, wasn't it? I spoke to guys that I've known have been over that way. It's brutal, and they don't care, do they? It's proper, they will just raze a whole village to the ground.
Yeah, so when we got there, we'd just been told about a church where they lined up 100 of the villagers and nuns and the priest and shot them all dead in the church, and you still see the blood on the walls.
Yeah, that's pretty horrendous. So you were going up against these people. Were you in combat against these people, or were you just reporting back and trying to sort of like put a line or a divide between them? What sort of work was it?
Yeah, really good question. We're just border patrol, so we were looking for any guerrilla activity coming over the border. So technically, we weren't fighting the Indonesian military, and there's a 1 million man army, so it wouldn't be a good idea. But they would ditch their uniforms, and sometimes they come over the border to try and find Kiwis, try and find Aussies, and try and also intimidate the East Timorese that wanted their independence. So our job is that border patrol. We go looking for the militia. We came across them a couple of times, but we didn't. Our patrols didn't see anyone too much. One of the other patrols got told about an Indonesian sergeant that had, hash air quotes, deserted. He just put a pair of blue jeans on and took his gat, and he came looking for some Kiwis to kill, and the boys saw him first and put the rounds down on him. So it was a few contacts there, but mainly border patrol and keeping the East Timorese safe from the bad guys.
Okay, so interesting work. I mean, you wouldn't turn your nose up at it. It sounded like a great tour.
It was a really good tour, really good learning. One of the things that stands out for me, shy of combat, Phil, was there was a 20-year-old that came over with us, and he had his 21st birthday, I think, 3 months into the tour, into a 6-month tour. I watched him become a man. I watched a boy turn into a man over that 6 months, and it was beautiful to see.
Yeah, very much so. I think, the same thing happened to me on my first operational tour, which was Northern Ireland years ago. I went over there as a boy and sort of like matured over a similar sort of period. Like, I mean? You got no choice. It's grow up or go home, isn't it, really?
It is, and I do really mean that. It was great to see. It wasn't that he just got hard or anything like that. He became a self-reflective, which is
Yeah.
maturity, and also not so insular focused, but outward focused over that time. And gosh, it was just really cool. And I'm sure the same thing happened to myself, but maybe I'm a bit of a slow learner.
So from there, from Timor, what was your next tour? Where did you go after that?
Yeah, Timor was back to the battalion, so into the regular force battalion. I was a SIG there in the infantry, as a platoon SIG. And then 2005, the chance that this selection came up. It was a new squadron, the Counter Terrorist Team, they called it. And before we cut out, I was saying that was a need for New Zealand SAS because all the guys were going to Iraq to earn all the gold. So the numbers were dwindling so much they were almost about to lose the team, the black roll team for people out there. So they had to get us in there, do a slightly shortened selection and a shortened, I think you call it continuation training. We call it cycle of training. Ours went down to 4 months, but ours was CT specific. So all it was black roll, and anything we needed like med and anything else around that to support it.
So method of entry, building assault, room assault, all that sort of stuff, all condensed into a little course for you.
Yeah, into that 4 month course. Yeah, my job on that was MOE and ended up as head of the MOE cell, and that was great. So MOE med driving.
I really enjoyed MOE. I think EMOE and MOE. I really enjoyed that. Do you know what I mean? I got so much pleasure out of just blowing stuff up. Like, do you know what I mean?
I love that, absolutely, and also problem solving as well, because quite creative, that side of things, that people wouldn't think. They think you're just a thug with some bombs, but it's quite creative what you're doing. You're trying to be pretty clever about it.
Well, you are. You're trying to put a hole in the wall and preserve whatever's on both sides. Do you know what I mean? Which there was so many considerations when you look back at it, thinking you had to know the depth of the wall, what was on the other. The whole thing was like how you ever came up with anything at all is incredible, isn't it? But yeah.
It cracked me up. You blow through the house, and back then we had the tire houses for explosive MOE. You'd see a door handle in the tire wall on the other side. You go, geez, I'm glad nobody was inside that one.
Yeah, maybe a bit of over. P for plenty, we called it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how many years did you do that for?
Like, I did that from 2005 to 2009. And then I left there. I left and relocated to Perth for money. Really underpaid over there. Loved that role, and looking back, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I should have stayed there for much longer. But money went out, and I came over to Australia to earn that, and fell into policing in the been in the fire brigade for the last 12 years. But that 4 years was just, preaching to the choir. Just so much goes on. You forget more than you did.
Yeah. Can you just take us through the selection process for that? Even though you said it was slightly shortened, can you take us through the selection process, how it went?
Yeah, it's quite unique, and not many people would actually get to know this one. So that obviously the New Zealand SAS guys, and Wiremu Moffat, Sergeant Major of the Army, Wiremu Moffat, who was the assault sergeant back then, became RSM of the SAS, and now he became SMA. He and another couple of guys devised it, and then tested it on the badge guys. 2 days of phobia testing. So Saturday, Sunday, they'll try and drown you. They'll try and light you on fire. So see if you're phobic to flame, claustrophobia, height, jumping off, into water off the frigates, all those things. Pretty harsh 2 days, but it's not a big deal physically. And I think most of the guys came through it. And then day one, Monday, we call it the longest day, and it's every fitness test the military has for about 12 hours. We start at 5 a.m. We parade again about 5, 6 at night, shivering away. And then this was the difference. They went, well, this is CT only. We're going to make it like a call out. So we're on the buses. We got to a location. We had to set up our tents. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. That was crazy. And you're being assessed on teamwork, which we don't normally do on New Zealand SAS Selection.
Yeah.
assessed on teamwork and how you're going. And then it was like heads down for half an hour, and here's a pager. If you hear the pager go off, you better get up. And after that, Phil, it was just rotation and rotation of tasks. So one task would be to get the remember the old aircraft ladders for the jumbo jets?
Yeah.
The big heavy ones. Get this ladder up this hill, and you look up, and the hill is just bush this close to your face. And the objective is like 1.5 km away, and you just got this thing on your head. You're pushing it through. You finally don't finish that task because it's almost an impossible task for that amount of time. You're ruined physically. Then it's right over here. Get your gas mask on. Move these 3,000 kilos of ammo tins from this location to this location in this pattern. So they were looking for, can you operate under extreme fatigue, but can you think under extreme fatigue?
Yeah, can you also keep it all together and start,
And can you do it monotonously because it's over and over? And they did that for around about 4 or 5 days. There was some other things that happened towards the end. You'd have to do a shoot. You'd have to remember how to use the MP5, which you were taught for 10 minutes on day 1. You got to remember that on day 7 and go and kill the bad guys. So you had to see a face, a photograph, go and find him in a room full of bad guys. And then the last thing, which was awesome, was milling. We stood outside, get your mouth guards in, right through the doors, and you milled, not with each other. No. After 7 days, and we're knackered, you go into a circle of badged SAS guys, and they've been hanging for this all week. All week, Phil.
Oh, that sounds absolutely awful.
Yeah, I hit the deck pretty hard. I remember that. But so that was our selection, and abbreviated, but really interesting, and took you to your limits. And if you wanted to be there, you had to keep put your life on the line. And at the end,
that's key.
They had to find it.
Yeah, so I think that's key with all these selection things. It finds out if you actually want to be there or not, doesn't it? Because you get plenty of opportunity to not be there.
Exactly. You're tired, cold, wet, and hungry, and those are easy words to say and very easy words for people to hear. But again, preaching the choir. When you're tired, cold, wet, and hungry, you have to dig deep. And then at the end of it, again with the milling, you now have to fight, because all that stuff that we talked about and that is just getting to work. You just get into the door. Now you got to go do work, and work is combat. And I thought it was really clever. Can these guys fight? Have they got the will to fight? Obviously, we're weak as hell, but will you put up the nuts, and will you do it?
Yeah, will you keep your head up? A lot of people will prepare to roll into a room but not look at anything. Do you know what I mean? You've got to keep your face up, look where you're going, and keep going forwards.
Exactly. Yeah. So looking back on it, I enjoyed it. It was hard, but you look back on that when you kept on going, and I think it's a moment of personal pride.
Yeah, absolutely. So you spent your time within the regiment there, and did you spend the majority of that time in New Zealand then?
Yeah. So our role when we were growing was CT only for domestic. It expanded to offshore recovery. So we'd look at embassies that we've got overseas. And after I left in 2011, there was the Kabul Intercontinental Hotel hostage rescue that the lads did. Okay. That was some of the badge SAS guys that went and did the room combat. We had a couple of commandos in the helicopters as well, doing helo sniping. So started to do some commandos getting into the combat role outside, and maybe I think you've got a unit over there that's is it SRR special?
That's right. Sure special reconnaissance. Yeah.
Yeah, and supporting the guys. So started to bridge that gap as well. And I know the guys did do some good work in Afghanistan as well.
Superb. So yourself, though, you got out, and where did you go? Where you got out? You said you weren't making too much dollars. So where did you go? What did you do?
Yes, I came to Perth, Western Australia. Myself and 3 other badge guys came. They went straight to SASR without selection, which was great. CO was highly cross, so he made the CO of SASR make anybody else coming along do selection. I came into Perth, and I fell into policing. I was lined up for a mining job, bit of money. That wasn't what it was cracked up to be. So jumped into police, rang the SWAT team here. They call it the TRG, said, look, I've literally just come off the team. Can I come play with you guys? They said, well, you got to be a cop. So I joined the police academy. They call it the police academy over here, Phil. I cracked up every day I turned up.
That does conjure up images of a certain film, doesn't it?
It does. It cracked me up every time. So I came into policing, and and I did 2 years of policing over here, and I'd found out about the hours the fire brigade works, which is 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off, and I applied. Police are super busy. Forgot about the application, get an email through, do that test, get an email through, and after about 3 or 4 months, I was asked to jump on the fire brigade training, and I changed uniform again, and I've done that for the last 12 years.
Okay, so you obviously enjoy the fire brigade stuff.
It's fun, Phil. It's, it's kind of like our old job. It's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But when it's hurry up, imagine turning up at the house and it's on fire. That's the ultimate hurry up for me.
Yeah. So when it goes off, it does go off like Chinese New Year, like.
100%. The last big job I went to was a car crash, pretty harsh one, motorbike versus car, and we rolled in, and already the other team that was there first were already cutting the car open. And just what I love about it is you just fill the gaps. You fill the gaps. There's no ego. It's just, okay, I need to do this, and how can I help you? And if I'm good at my job, I can expand a little bit and help out other people's jobs. And yeah, she's all on. A lot of weight, like I said, but when it's hurry up, it's really rewarding because you're helping people.
Yeah. So how much sort of like continuation training do you do on a regular basis? If you're not deployed, are you training? Do you do lots of courses and that sort of stuff?
No, it's so different than what we are used to. Courses are few and far between. Sometimes the station, which is only 4 guys, they'll go away for a day, maybe every 3 or 4 months, and do a bit of upskilling. Really, it's just reskilling. Or you get a piece of new equipment on, you might skill on that. But we'll train on cutting up cars and getting your simulated casualties out. You'll train in the fire buildings every now and then, but pretty few and far between. What we do is we learn off each other. If a young guy comes along that's been through the school for the last 5-6 months, Phil, we'll learn from him. I'm a 12-year firey. I want to know what he has learned, because he's learned 12 years better skills than I have.
Yeah. So it's sort of like an ongoing thing all the time.
Yeah.
So your self-defense and that, do you still do any self-defense? I know you do a lot of muscle type stuff and a bit more training like that. Explain to us what you're up to with your self-defense and that.
Yeah, look, I'm trying my best to get the business side of things going, and much like other SF guys, we're good at the operating, but not so good at the business side of things. I do still teach it. I've got on my website where I actually got a film crew in. We filmed it, and hopefully that's going to kick off. And I do custom courses every now and then with government agencies, and sometimes the smaller groups. The last one we did was great. This one was amazing, Phil. I've taught this for 23 years. This group got asked by a city council here in Perth to teach the elderly. And I was like, well, okay, thinking this through, is 60 years old to 84 years old.
Wow.
And you know what? They were the most motivated I've ever trained. And I had a ex-SWAT team guy with me helping out. They were the most motivated people I've ever seen train. They're not the most physically capable, but also because of that, we had to problem solve. Like, well, what are you going to do? Because you can't do this. You might have to do that, So it was really enjoyable teaching them. There was a group of about 25
that really is.
So
that takes it to another level. I mean, when you're teaching someone in their prime, lots of things work. When you're teaching someone who isn't in their prime, then perhaps they're not going to be able to push as hard as they could before. They're not going to be able to pull in. They're not going to be able to choke out. They're not going to be. So they're going to have to find other ways to get to the same result. And that must be really interesting.
It is, and it's realistic, And when I start a course, I always ask, has anybody been in a confrontation? And the stories I was getting was unreal. It was great to hear. So I was trying to.
There's a podcast in that.
Yeah, you're so right. But what was interesting, Phil, because they're mature people, and I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. They're mature and they're thinking and their experience. So for the first little while, they were like, Damian, what if we just avoided this? I was like, yeah, but if it's worst case, we need to do this. There was an issue of them stepping up to the plate. So what I did on the second lesson, I brought along a bunch of teddy bears because I was trying to rack my brains, and I threw these teddy bears at them, one each, and said, right, that's your grandson. That's your granddaughter. Now let's go protect that. And it changed because they knew they couldn't diffuse it. They had to then switch on. So that was another way of how am I going to get this lesson across in their communication way that they need to be talked to.
Wow. I mean, that whole thing. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody sort of like teaching or having a niche in that area of the 60 plus, because that's just, I don't know, it's just crazy. I've never heard of it. But it's actually, they're probably the more vulnerable people in society who are more likely to get targeted at things like cash points and outside of shops and all that sort of stuff.
That's exactly right. That was some of the brief I got asked by the city council. Muggings, carjacking, go to your car, ATMs. You've got all your stuff on you. Got your handbag, because there's a lot of females got your handbag and everything else. Some of them are slightly disabled, like you intimated. They can't. They're not going to be able to kick anyone in the head. So we've got to make it realistic. And the fact is, they've still got to do the job. So it was really, really interesting figuring that out. I really enjoyed it. And, looking back at the SOE, same deal. They're not going to train unarmed combat for years. They've got to deploy in 4 to 8 weeks. So you've got to get up to speed.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, with all these things, and people have said to me about the stuff that the regiment did and all that. No. I've got primary and secondary weapons to focus on. I've got to play with that. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got explosive skills I've got to learn. I've got a language probably. I've got all this other stuff. Now, when am I going to turn myself into Bruce Lee? I'll tell you when. I'm not going to turn myself into Bruce Lee. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to have to learn what I can on the hoof and find out that my fingers and my elbows can do more than just rest my head on them. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh, you're so right. Funny you were saying just before, the elderly probably the ones that might need that more. And we talked about Fairbairn and Sykes before. If you Google on YouTube, go on YouTube and you Google Fairbairn and Sykes, there's a couple of old boys, literal World War II commandos, and they're talking about what they learned under Fairbairn and Sykes. And gosh, I'll tell you, these guys don't look the part, but when they move, they're gonna chop, they're gonna gouge, yeah. They're probably gonna pull out their dagger at the same time, and you wouldn't want to mess with them.
They know exactly what they're doing with it, don't they? And that was exactly what Fairbairn and Sykes set out to do, was put a system in place that could go up against these people who probably had training of some description in their own country. All these martial artists and all that sort of stuff, which was rife in them places, especially amongst gangsters and criminals. You had to assume they'd all had a tear up at some stage. So you had to match them with something that was just as capable.
I got taught a story about that as well, Phil, and I've forgotten. He's a major, I think, in the SAS. You probably know the name better than me, but he's in. They're fighting the Japanese, and he was an officer. He was officer, obviously. He left his troops, and they're in the river. They went for a bath in the river. Went for a wash. He left his troops a little bit to get some privacy, and he came back, and he said to his guys, he said he'd come back just wearing his boots, and I think he was stark naked and just carrying his gear. He came back and said, "Right, you lot, I don't ever want to see you without your boots on, because guess what just happened to me?" He was bathing, he had his boots on, and he looked up, and just down the way in the river, a Japanese officer also looked up. And long story short, they went to head, and he smashed his head in with his boots. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Mad Mike Calvert.
Mad Mike Calvert. Now that is a name there. That is, he's a machine. He's a warrior. That man is. And he had an extremely tough name, and was an extremely tough man.
I think this Japanese guy was some kind of Aikido expert, but it doesn't matter when you're in water and you're fighting a guy with boots and you're in bare feet. Bare feet aren't going to work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and that is exactly the sort of thing I'd expect to hear from. I hadn't heard that particular story, but it's the sort of thing I'd have heard from Mad Mike Calvert, because he probably even enjoyed it, to be honest.
I can't imagine what happens. The feeling of, is it like a watermelon underneath your boot? But he did the job, and he passed that information on to his soldiers.
Yeah. But he's quite right as well. If you're in an area where you can make yourself more vulnerable by doing, why would you do that? Do you know what I mean? You need to keep yourself as on point for as much of the time as possible. Do you know what I mean? And be realistic about it too. You need to wash, but you can wash with your boots on. You
got it. And in the army, we would take one boot at a time, one boot off at a time to powder one foot, and so on when you're in and dug in. But I take it from that. I was saying before, I like to help people with my experience. People ask me what I have, if anything kicks off in the night. The thing I have beside my bed is a pair of bloody boots.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't answer my front door unless I put a pair of shoes on first.
Exactly. Everything else is fine, but you need the boots, right?
That's right. Yeah. I don't want to get hold of certain things, you know what I mean? But I can kick it. At least I can kick you off, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So have you got any what you would call your staple pearls of wisdom for people who probably aren't so able to fight, who might end up having to fight? Because ultimately, a lot of the people, like you say, who are going to end up fighting are the ones that don't fight, because they're the ones that are the soft, juicy targets for these people that want to take them on.
Yeah. There's two things. One, if you've been in a confrontation and you won, and you've been going to yourself, oh, I wish I could have done this, or I think I should have done this, forget it. You did great. Don't let that black dog get in your brain. If you were safe and you won, great job. But pillars of wisdom going forwards, I would say our principles are: there's no rules, fight as dirty as you can, and eyes, throat, knees down. If that means you smash the guy's foot, if that means you bite his ear off to get to his eyes as he pulls away, great. If you can smash him in the throat, great. But that all requires, trying to bring this into a succinct answer, that all requires your ability to switch it on. And those elderly people couldn't switch it on until I gave them the teddy bear, and they were the best crew I've ever taught in 22 years, because they had their valuable item. They didn't really care about themselves in comparison to, oh, this is my grandchild. You're not going to get near them. So you got to be able to turn it on. And you know this, when it's on, it's on. And most people won't do
absolutely.
that. Most people will succumb. So eyes, throat, knees down for the technical skills. Go for those soft areas. If you can avoid a fight, like you said, avoid the fight. But if you're in it and they've chosen violence, you got to go for those. But you got to be able to turn it on. If you're prepared to fight to the death, I mean, if we have an argument, we have an argument. That's words. But if we're going to fight, and I know your skills, and you're much bigger than me, we're going to fight. It's going to end badly for one of us. But, if you're going to be in a fight, you just got to finish it and win.
Do you think training can overcome? I ask this to a lot of people, and I get a mixed response. The fight and flight thing. Some people say, if it's flight, it's always flight. And I say, no. I always believe that you can, with the right amount of training dispels fear, and the right mindset, and learning how to do things like switch it on, will overcome the fight or flight thing. Are you in agreement with that? Or would you say if it's a fight or flight, if you're sort of like the flighty type, you will always run away?
No, I agree with the former. It's a trainable skill, a trainable mindset. And that was proven scientifically by a few people. You got to, us, we were taught to shoot people in the face. Normal humans don't do that, and normal soldiers find it hard. The Argentinians couldn't do it because they shot on targets, whereas you British shot on the Hun's head. So it's a trainable thing, but you have to be exposed to it. If you've never been exposed to that battle or that pressure, that fear, you're not inoculated. And on the day, if you're a jiu-jitsu expert, if you're a boxing expert, and then some guy comes jumping on you, or three guys, you will probably freak out and not do any of your skills. But if you've been exposed to it in a safe environment, systematically getting tougher and tougher, I'm sure that you can work that out. But it's battle inoculation, which comes back to how you and I were trained, Phil.
Yeah. No, you're right. I've always said, with the parachuting thing in particular, it's not a normal thing to throw yourself out of a plane, but with the right understanding and the right thing, I'll go out the door every day. It doesn't matter to me now. Do you know what I mean? But thinking about it, if you'd have just handed me a chute and said, off you go, I'd have said, no, mate, I ain't doing that. Do you know what I mean? That'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you said knowledge dispels fear. And I think that was the mantra when we were doing our para course.
Yeah, the number, the parachute school over here. That's their sort of like, that is their thing. Like, knowledge dispels fear. That's their little saying type thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I'm at 100% sure that you can expose someone to it in a safe and gradually increasing level of stress. But without it, they'll probably freeze. And that's what that OODA loop people say. It's the time between realizing something's going on and taking action. And you and I, we realize and take action straight away. But when we started, it wasn't that quick. There was what am I doing? And then you start to take action. And that's that time gap that the bad guy can win in. And I want to teach people to bring that down so they can survive and win.
Yeah, you're right. And I think there is a tendency with some people to blinker themselves from violence and pretend it's not there. And I think that's an extremely naive thing to do, because you have to accept that it is there. There's testimony up the yin-yang of people that have been seriously hurt in these incidents. And if you can do something to even start thinking about it, or at least acknowledge that sort of thing can happen, you're going to be better prepared. But not just better prepared, you're going to be more confident in life in general.
You're absolutely right. And expanding upon that, because I hope that I hope that people never have to use that. It's my sincere
Of
hope.
course, yeah.
But
Of course.
bad guys, you know, you've seen some bad stuff, and as a cop, you see the minds of crims and bad guys, and they don't care. They will visit violence immediately. But on the other side of that, I forgot. I lost my train of thought there. No,
That's all right, mate.
if violence happens upon you, sometimes you just don't have that choice. You have to act. And your mentality, if you're just trying to avoid it all the time and not believe in it, which is why my business is hard to get some traction. Yeah, when it happens to you, it's going to be a bad day.
So what are your plans for the future now? Just sort of like coming to a close. What's your plans for the future? Where do you see yourself? Are you going to carry on with the fire brigade for a bit longer, or are you going to try and expand into this business model and teach people all about, you know, the ways of the world?
I'll try and do both, I think, Phil. It's a great question. The fire brigade is something I think. Yeah, I'll try and do both, and just working on the marketing side of what I do. I mean, the skills are there, and I love teaching those people, and they get a lot out of it. So I'll try and do both. You see what's in the future. The future was always trying to get you on my show, so that was amazing to get the invite and have a chat with you on this.
Well, if I could scrape myself an airfare together, I'd love to come over and see you one day. Maybe have a move around on a mat as well. That would be quite good fun, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, gosh. I'll tell you what, you'd love New Zealand. Have you been over that way?
No, never been. And every time I've had a trip over there, it's been cancelled. I was supposed to come over twice when I was serving, and they both got cancelled because various things happened. And then my son was playing football in Australia, soccer in Australia, and he broke his jaw. And I was about to step on a plane to go down there, and he sort of like sorted himself out and went, no, Dad. And actually, it was the right thing to do, because if I had have gone down there, perhaps he would have always phoned me up when there was a drama. And now he's sort of like, he's very independent, do you know what I mean? And I think it was probably the right decision at the hard, but the right decision at the time. Anyway, he ended up coming home about a week later once he'd sorted his jaw out. So I've never got down there, and I'd love to go down there. It's definitely on the bucket list. It's a beautiful place of the world.
You reminded me there. You know, I've got an 8-year-old boy. He's over there. He's having a laugh at us before about answering the door in just boots. But that's my. He's loving it. That was my real purpose. You know, there's a job, and you got to do the job to put money on the table. But you know, I'm 50 years old and dad to an 8-year-old boy, and that's my purpose, is trying to be that good father. So you reminded me there. Yeah. It's an evolving puzzle, that one.
Yeah. No, you're right, and your priorities are that young man who's obviously hiding behind the sofa or doing what he's doing now. Like, do you know what I mean? So, you know, and rightly so.
Exactly, life changing that.
Listen, buddy, it's been great having you on. We hope that we build some sort of a relationship with you, and you know, we love the fact that you've been on here, and hopefully we'll be able to reciprocate by doing something with you in the future. Anything you'd like to say? I was just going to quickly promote your Instagram page, which is How Not to Die Guy. Is that the right one, is it? How Not to Die Guy.
That is. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a few things on there that might help people, a few fun things and a few reality things. And yeah, anybody can reach out anytime, you know, like yourself, stuff. So humble. Yeah, thank you.
All good stuff. Listen, it's been tremendous. It's been fun. I'll see you next time. All right, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much, Phil. Appreciate it.
Cheers, my man. See you in a bit.